Good afternoon, good afternoon. We're so happy to have everyone here. I am Angelique Moss from the Policy Studies Organization, and I'm so happy to present the Turkish Foreign Relations panel. We are delighted to have Evren Altinkas from the University of Guelph. We also have, we also have Janice Farkas from the American Public University System, and Firmanda Taufiq from the Graduate School of UIN Sunan Yogyakarta. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I will turn it over to Evren. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thanks for everyone. Thanks to everyone for joining us here today. Usually these academic sessions and talks are with less number of attendees, and I'm very much used to it. So, but it's okay. It's good to have a group of informed people to listen and to raise questions. My name is Evren. I have a PhD in comparative history. I'm originally from Turkey, so that's why this session is extremely interesting for me to listen to my colleagues and their interpretation of the recent developments in Turkey in the last decade mostly. My presentation is about the US-Turkey nexus and authoritarianism. As someone who lived in Turkey since Erdoğan and his political party came to power in 2002, I was able to witness the transformation of the country from the first hand. I was working as a teaching assistant at a public university back then, and public generally had very high hopes about Turkey when Erdoğan came to power. You know, after 9/11, the identity crisis Turkey faced was now going to be balanced with a semi-conservative party, but with the goals of democracy and, you know, let's say in the best way to put it, with an intention to join the European and Western world into the right direction, and not repeating the mistakes the previous governments of Turkey did, etc. So we had these high hopes as the society, not all of us, but most of us, let's say. But then we witnessed a breakup of relations in the second half of the 2000s, especially starting from 2010. We started to witness the authoritarian turn in Turkey at different levels within the society. First, regarding different segments of the society, and then in the foreign relations of Turkey. And I'm going to talk about the last 10 years mostly, and I'm going to show you some pictures in my presentation. So let me start sharing my screen, and let's go from there. So originally, Turkey in 1950s by the US State Department was called as a country in between. So when you look at this map, you will see the situation of the country. I mean, the identity crisis shows itself on this map because it is in the border of Asia. It is called Asia Minor, in early 20th century history books or journals or newspapers when you look at American newspapers. But it also has some territories in Europe. But, since the Cold War, Turkey has been a member of Western Alliance. It became a NATO member, etc. So it is originally in Asia, predominantly a Muslim country, but with intention to join the West, to become a part of the West. And for Turkey, West begins from Eastern Europe. So the country in between, as defined by US State Department, was eventually called as a torn country by Samuel Huntington in his infamous Clash of Civilizations article. which was published in 1993, right after the end of Cold War. And Samuel Huntington classified Turkey among the countries which are considered as torn countries and described these countries as countries that seek to affiliate with another civilization. So it was, if you remember, the clash of civilizations, which was actually very important in North American university education system in the first 10 years of post-Cold War era, which means most of the decision makers, bureaucrats of the United States were affiliated with this concept, and they actually I mean, this article and the discussion around this article and the books about this were part of the curriculum. They were part of the university and even graduate studies. So that's why Huntington was like a celebrity in academia in early post-Cold War era. So his idea of torn country was also reaffirmed by Turkey in many ways. For instance, before Huntington mentioned the idea of torn country, in 1950s, Turkey has issued these stamps, these memorial stamps, which says that, which is the commemoration of 150th anniversary of American independence, for instance. And you see Roosevelt and Turkish president next to each other. The importance of United States and its role in shaping of Turkish identity and Turkish intention to become a part of Western civilization was indicated in many times, and this is one of them. In 1990s, when the Cold War ended and when Gulf War was around, Turkey was considered as an important tool or as an important ally to be used in the Central Asian countries, because in Central Asia, which were no longer a part of Soviet Union now, all the countries like Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan had some ties with Turkey because of their Turkic origins. And then Turkey was considered as an important potential big brother for these countries, and therefore the relations between Turkey and US were closer than ever. Here we see Father Bush with the president of that time, Turgut Özal, who was a very important leader in Turkish history in the early years of post-Cold War era. And then in 2002, after 9/11, the perception of Muslim countries, the perception of the Middle East started to change in the United States, and the American public opinion was shaped on this. And then came the new rising star of Turkey, Erdoğan. This is a picture of him giving a speech at one of the prominent American institutions, actually. He gave a speech in 2004. He gave a speech at Harvard University Kennedy School of Government. And in this speech, he said that as Turkey proceeds in the direction of membership to the European Union, also the modern democratic values which she represents create greater attraction in the Middle East. So the idea of a Muslim country embracing the modern democratic values and trying to become a member of the European Union, represented by a conservative leader such as Erdogan, who had Islamist roots, was considered as a great combination by the United States in order to determine its future policies in the Middle East. And he was a great match in order to fulfill this. But starting from the let's say second half of 2000s, let's say starting from 2005, 2006 mostly, Erdogan started to use a rhetorical language in which he says, I am obliged to market my country, which means that for Erdogan, Turkey was a company, and that company, that brand had to be marketed for investment, so more investors would be attracted into the country. So his idea of reshaping the relations between West and Turkey started to take place and started to show itself starting after 2005. And then we came to 2010, when Syrian civil war started. so this marketing of the country has shown itself in two ways in Turkish foreign policy and domestic policy. One of them was to support the establishment of Free Syrian Army, which was fighting against the Assad regime. Here we see members of the Free Syrian Army carrying a flag of Free Syrian Army and the Turkish flag. And they started, Turkey started to train and logistically support the Free Syrian Army in their resistance, in their fight against the Assad regime in Syria. And the other part of the Syrian civil war ended up with the refugee crisis. Here we see the border between Turkey and Syria. On the right side, we see Turkey, the refugees from Syria, and then on the left, we see a deserted Syrian land. So the refugees that started to flow into Turkey was another consequence of Syrian civil war for Turkey. Today, there are approximately 3 million Syrian refugees living in Turkey, but they are not organized. I mean, they are not, we cannot find them in a certain place. They are scattered all around the country. Some of them have citizenship, some of them have other rights, which is a good policy actually for refugees, which gives them a space to act actually, but it also creates some other financial and economic and social problems for them, which is not the, which I'm not going to cover too much in detail in this presentation. When Syrian civil war started and when Turkey showed its support to the Free Syrian Army and accepting the refugees, and when Turkey was very popular in Western media, among the Western countries, something extraordinary happened in Turkey. This is called the Gezi Protest. Gezi protests happened in 2013, and it lasted for almost 3 months with the participation of more than 4 million people in all the cities of Turkey protesting the government. It started with a very simple thing, but then it turned into an anti-government series of protests. But during the protests, the government forces have used extreme violence against the protesters. 22 people died as a result of these protests, all by the police violence ordered by the government. Government officials, including Erdoğan and his ministers, were on TV all of the time during the protests. They said that these protesters were the agents or tools of foreign powers. They were, you know, like spies funded by NGOs, or in some cases, they even mentioned that the United States was funding these protesters and some Western countries, etc. And the level of violence used against these people, the level of authoritarianism, the authoritarian turn of Turkish government has shown to the free media of the world that actually Erdogan was not acting as he was claiming to be. He claimed that he was a democratic leader, but the first organized protests within the country ended up with the consolidation of an authoritarian regime in Turkey. More than 20,000 people were arrested, 5,000 of them imprisoned, at least 2,000 civil servants, including academics and me, were forced from their positions, forced to resign from their positions as a result of these protests, etc. So very soon, after the Gezi protests and after Erdogan used the refugee card and his support to Free Syrian Army as a way to balance his authoritarian regime in Turkey. So any possible criticism from the Western media and Western governments were counterbalanced in a way, because we have the refugees, we are supporting the Free Syrian Army. So you cannot call us an authoritarian or anti-democratic country card. Was questioned when ISIS appeared. There were a lot of reports in the Western, among the Western intelligence agencies and foreign affairs reporters that Turkey was providing a logistical and ammunition support to ISIS at different levels, that most of the Free Syrian Army members have joined ISIS when it was established. These were some of the claims, some of the reports circulating around the think tanks, around NGOs, etc. And in 2004, some lorries were captured in Turkey by another I mean, the Turkish gendarmerie has stopped some lorries that were carrying weapons to ISIS. And here you see a picture of those weapons that were seized by the gendarmerie. And then the Turkish government, Erdogan and his ministers said that no, we were carrying weapons to help the Turkish Turkomans in Syria. They were not sent to ISIS, but everyone was talking about them. But then he counterbalanced this as well. In 2016, so he consolidated his authoritarian regime by arresting the journalists who made news about this, and two of them are still on exile in different parts of the world. They cannot return to Turkey, and there were 800 people arrested just because they shared this news on their social media accounts. Then in 2016, a military coup attempt happened in Turkey, which consolidated Erdogan's authoritarian regime. Here you see the picture of the Istanbul leg of the coup attempt. The group of soldiers blocking the bridge. That was the most important phase of the military coup attempt. Here you see the picture of it. And as a result of this coup attempt, which was not successful, thankfully, the authorities have dismissed or suspended more than 60,000 police and military personnel, 125,000 civil servants. They arrested or imprisoned more than 90,000 citizens and closed more than 1,500 non-governmental organizations. So, and these are the numbers from 2020. So most of the people who were arrested or imprisoned had no affiliation with the religious cleric who was considered as the brain of this military coup attempt, Fethullah Gulen, who is living in exile in US for the last 20 years now. And most of the people, as I said, who were arrested or imprisoned had no ties with them. They were known as very secular but anti-government opposition members, and they were subject to this purge. You might have heard about the Academics for Peace, which is another group, for instance, and they were purged as well. Then in 2017, we witnessed the S-400 crisis when Turkey bought missiles from Russia. And as a NATO member, this was against the rules of NATO, and the United States suspended its F-35 program. And now there is an ongoing discussion about the Ukrainian crisis, what will Turkey do, etc. But again, Erdogan has played his card, under the title of obliged to market his country. And then he put a case called the Halkbank case. There was this guy, Hakan Atilla, who was the second chair of a public bank in Turkey, Halkbank. U.S. jury American authorities arrested him in the United States, and the jury found him guilty of evading the sanctions on Iran by funneling money to Iranian banks through other methods by using the Halkbank and its channels. And he was arrested for 33 months in prison in 2017, but then Turkey arrested an American pastor who has been working in Turkey for the last 20 years under Brunson. And then Erdogan said that if you want to get Brunson, if you want us to release him, give us Hakan Atilla back. And that exchange actually happened. So long story short, when we look at the last 10 years of Turkey and its relations with the democratic part of the world, we see that Erdogan has always used some external, some foreign policy tools to counterbalance his authoritarian regime within the country. And that ended up with this friendly poses, this friendly picture with two tradesmen, one of them marketing his country and the other one investing in that country. So thank you. This is my presentation. Thank you for listening. And I think our next speaker is Janice. Janice, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for passing that off to me, Evren. My name is Janice Farkas, and first I would like to say thank you to the Policy Studies Organization for allowing me to speak today. It is an honor to be here speaking with such accomplished other speakers. I am a doctoral student at American Public University studying strategic intelligence, and I'm in my second year of studies. And today I'm going to be speaking regarding a study that I performed through a course specific to psychological evaluations of global actors. And my study was performed on President Erdogan, who was an intriguing individual, to say the least, as Evren set me up to discuss in more detail, specific to the Syrian refugee crisis, which he touched on briefly as well. That leader has been described as a wolf in sheep's clothing for many reasons, some of which I will go into detail today. But I'm going to share my presentation and get started. So when I began my study, I looked at the nation of Turkey as a whole, and to do that, we really have to look at its roots. And as Evren discussed, it is a country in between. It was formed from the Ottoman Empire, which existed for a period of time from 1280 to just after World War I. And in 1923, it became its own country. And during that time of the Ottoman Empire, it was an Islamic-based society, and it really spanned a huge aspect of Europe and parts of the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And after World War I ended, the country or the territory was divided pursuant to the treaties of Sèvres and Lausanne. It was parceled out into new countries, and what was left is what we know today as Turkey. So when it's the Ottoman Empire, it was really an Islamic caliphate, and it then became more of a national governance. And so its religious identity became more cultural than governmental, and we would see ebbs and flows of that government changing over time from 1923 until about 60 years later, when the nation would start being ruled again by a more Muslim political party. So the Welfare Party in 1923 was more of an Islamic-based party, and that's when we saw Erdogan get his first experience in politics. He became the head of the Welfare Party, and in this district where he was present. And then in 1994, he became the mayor of Istanbul, still ruling under that power. And he focused on social issues, critical infrastructure, and financial issues in Istanbul. He actually was imprisoned in 1997 for inciting for some rhetoric through an Islamic poem, but that did not slow or hamper his career at all. In 2001, he formed the Justice and Development Party, which is known as the AKP Party. And in 2003, he was named Prime Minister of Turkey. He continued on as Prime Minister of Turkey for 3 terms. And then in 2014, he was named as president. As Evren discussed, there was a coup attempt in 2016, which he thwarted basically overnight. And he was actually, I believe, on vacation at the time. And he organized an overthrow of the coup within 24 hours and came back and was successful. In 2018, he began as the new presidential system of government, again named as president, and has continued in that stead since that time. Specific to my study was his engagement with the European Union with regard to the ongoing Syrian refugee crisis. Specifically, when the war began in 2011, millions of citizens started to flee from the country, and many European Union countries were unwilling or unable to take migrants into their borders. Due to the positioning of Turkey and its Islamic roots, it welcomed these Syrian refugees, and for many reasons, to shelter individuals who were similarly postured ideologically, And as we will see as I further my discussion, Erdogan had some interest in it as well for foreign policy and domestic policy. So as these 4 million or upwards of 4 million refugees streamed into the borders, he believed it would be a short-lived existence in Turkey and saw that he could shelter these individuals, but conditions slowly deteriorated for the refugees and for Turkish citizens alike, because there was nowhere to put people. They were straining resources of the government, and it created hardship by 2016, where President Erdogan then went to the EU and was asking for help, basically. So using this as a bargaining chip, they agreed to a 6 billion euro support plan where the EU would give Turkey support in the term of financial support to keep the migrants within Turkey's borders, basically. The refugees would receive the social benefits of that money. Turkey was relieved of some of the burden of supporting them. And it was good foreign policy for the EU because it kept them within the borders instead of streaming into other countries in the EU. Unfortunately, the crisis of COVID and the continuing war in Syria has proven difficult for Turkey because they've now kept about 4 million individuals within their borders. The support from the 2016 agreement has basically run out. And with COVID and the strain of just domestic costs, the refugees have seen strife there. Turkish citizens have seen strife as well. And it has caused Erdogan to reevaluate this policy and start to try to find a way to deal with it other than keeping them there. So through this study, as I mentioned, it was a psychological theories study of global leaders. And so I evaluated 3 theories of psychological drivers for foreign policy actions. The first one was the theory of psychological constructivism. And through that, it was determined that these individuals, driven for the thought that they can make a change in the world and belief that they can make big changes all on their own, would drive Erdogan to take these refugees in. And it causes an individual to reflect on their own past, the past of their culture, and wanting to be big. And in the history of the Ottoman Empire, of course, Erdogan would want to have this show of support for the in-group of the Muslim society that the Syrian refugees would represent. The rational actor theory is also a theory that I evaluated in terms of Erdogan and his actions. And that includes individuals who identify as making choices that appear rational, but are really based in inherent bias and something that they have developed through their inherent core. And so seeing how Erdogan considers himself first as a Muslim and Turkish secondary, and that would drive his policies to take in these scores of Muslim citizens from another region or nation and try to support them. And while it may not have been the most rational choice, it is something that he made, and he believes it is a rational act because of that psychological theory. Social identity theory is also a theory that I looked at in terms of evaluating his actions here. And that pertains to an association with a group of individuals or a category of people. And in that theory, it instills this belief that if you associate with a group of individuals and you promote the growth of that group, you then as an individual will also be uplifted and elevate the individuals within that group. And so through that, elevating the Islamic culture in Turkey and that social identity of that group would then elevate the president as well. So in reviewing all of these theories, it is identified that Erdogan is heavily motivated by his ideological religious beliefs. He has over time disassociated himself with Turkish nationals who believed in themselves as Turkish first, and the Kurds within Turkey. He has demonstrated this through his, as Evren noted, quashing of free speech and protests, and has been quoted as condemning some speech and protests because they are disrespectful to Islam. And that is a clear identifier that he does not necessarily support the democratic belief of freedom of beliefs of individuals unless they comport with his beliefs as Islamic beliefs. Also, it has been said that he is fearful that if he allows Kurds within Turkey to flourish in some way, then they most likely will seek support from Syrian Kurds and perhaps create an uprising of some kind. And so he has been said to quell the Kurds and basically create cultural genocide of the Kurds in Turkey to keep them down, because they do not support his identity and they are not part of his in-group. So he continues to support the Syrian refugees in Turkey. He had actually cleared a region in October 2019 where he launched a military objective against Kurdish forces to clear an area in North Syria to allow the Syrian refugees to kind of resettle back into that region. He believed that he would be supporting a safe zone there and to provide relief for those individuals to repopulate their country. Unfortunately, that really did not prove successful, and the refugees remain as they have been in Turkey for this time. There has been no new deal with the EU. The EU has not allowed them, Turkey, into the European Union at all. And it's become a dangerous atmosphere at times for the Syrian refugees in Turkey. Jobs are difficult to find for them. And as Evren mentioned, they are fragmented throughout the country. And so I think it's difficult for them to find places where they do belong and they can create a society that is supported. So it's been a difficult place for them. And it also creates a hardship on Turkish citizens because jobs may not be as available because Syrians are taking those jobs in their mind. And the financial support that might otherwise be provided to Turkish citizens has to be dedicated to the large amount of Syrians in the country. So as recently as January of 2022, President Erdogan has been cited as criticizing the EU, but he still claims that it is his goal to join. One of the countries that it seems Turkey and Erdogan work well with at times is Russia. As Evren mentioned, they had a large purchase of defense systems from that nation. And most recently, they've been trying to broker some sort of ceasefire or peaceful discussions in the Ukraine conflict, and has kind of straddled both sides of that, you know, from the political aspect of that. They do provide the existing protections for the Syrian refugees, and it does not appear that this will change anytime soon. He is dedicated to helping this group of Muslim citizens and will use it as a bargaining chip against the EU, neighboring nations such as Greece, and keeping that threat over the EU as much as possible. And as long as those satisfy his goals and his identity as a Muslim first and a Turkish citizen second, this will suit him very well in the future. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. I'm going to pass it now to Firmanda, I believe.
Very much. Okay, I will try to presenting my presentation. Can you hear me?
No, we can't really hear you.
Or just not hear from me? What is okay? But the presentation is here. Everyone. Okay, I will try to present. My article is Turkey, Neo-Ottomanism, Negotiation of Islamism, Secularism, and Erdogan Political Policy. My name is Firmanda Taufiq. I'm a doctoral student of Business Studies in Graduate School of Kalijaga, Yogyakarta, Indonesia. And then I will try to introduce this
Firmanda, I'm so sorry, I hate to
Okay.
interrupt you, but we are really having a hard time hearing you with the static. I just wanted to double check with my other panelists, because we may have to, you know, submit a separate recording of your presentation, because it doesn't seem like it's working so much today. For my fellow panelists also, can you hear? How does it sound?
No, no,
No,
unfortunately.
it's very staticky.
Not presentation is here.
And then whenever we speak, we definitely hear feedback. So Firmanda, I'm gonna ask you to stay on. And if you could still, you know, use the chat to help answer some of the questions we might get from the Q&A. And then we could work with you on getting a video of your presentation. So again, my name is, if you wanted to stop your share, I'm so sorry. But we definitely want to be able to offer, you know, your full presentation so that everyone can hear clearly. So we will jump into the question and answer portion of the program. If we do have, you know, any attendees that have any questions, including for our panelist, Firmanda. So I'll start off first. You know, we were seeing a lot of strongmen in the area, and Erdoğan is, you know, it's definitely in that category, but I see him also trying to, you know, be that middleman as well. And he's coming up a lot in the news as, you know, trying to broker a peace between Putin and Zelensky. So I'm very curious, separate from your presentations, on your giving your knowledge and being experts, what are your thoughts on, you know, on what he's doing and how helpful Turkey could be in this peace process?
Janice, you? Oh.
You can go first, Evren, if you have any insight on this. I did a little bit of research because I anticipated this question to come up, but I could defer to you as.
No, you go first, please.
Okay. The one thing that I find interesting is in fact his desire to act as this middleman. I thought it was, but right in line with what he does, right? Like he just seems to be that guy that kind of wants to be in there and, you know, getting his hands in the mix. And I did think that it was very interesting because he's kind of stuck, you know, in this, he's in NATO, but he's not in the EU type of situation. And so, you know, it's in his interest to play nice with the big powers of NATO and still, you know, try to cooperate with Putin, who I think that he really admires. I really think that there's a level of admiration that he has for Putin, and it just seems that he wants to be that guy that does this. Seeing that he did exercise his right to close the that strait, you know, where they couldn't bring the warships into the I think it's the Black Sea, right, Evren? Was really interesting because that was a real show of force. Like that's a very supportive role for him to take. And I think that that was an interesting move on his part. And I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Well, I have a couple of things to say as well. First of all, about what Janice said regarding the status of Black Sea. It is related with an agreement, with a convention that dates to 1936. It's called the Montreux Convention. And according to that convention, in wartime, Turkey will not let any kind of belligerent states to send their vessels from the Mediterranean to Black Sea and vice versa, but mostly from Mediterranean to the Black Sea. So the straits will be closed to the vessels of the belligerent states. However, what Turkey did was to block the passage of vessels of NATO to the Black Sea as well in this crisis. Okay, so I mean, he's playing his cards in order to balance both sides, but Turkey is still a member of NATO. And more importantly, of course, there's an obvious reason for that, and that's very understandable from Erdogan's perspective, because Turkish economy is heavily tied and connected with Russia regarding imports, exports, and also, most importantly, tourism, because the tourism in Turkey was limited to Russian tourists in the last 5 years, especially after the military coup attempt and the ongoing violence in Turkey regarding bombings and other suicide bombings and other attacks. So that's why the Western countries, when you check on their websites, on the government websites, they have travel advisories regarding Turkey to their citizens. So it's Russia where Turkish tourism income comes from. And now if Turkey decides to ban the air zone to Russian planes and then eventually stop accepting Russian tourists into Turkish territory, the already shaking Turkish economy will face harder consequences as a result of this. So that's why he has to be careful. But obviously Turkey must always remember its NATO membership and follow the principles of NATO and other NATO members in this crisis. But it depends on the financial promises. Only yesterday, an American advisor has wrote an article and suggested Turkey to provide the S-400 missiles to Ukraine for defense, which Turkey purchased from Russia. And today, Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Lavrov said this cannot be done. Russia will not allow this to happen. And now Turkey, I mean, all the American decision makers are looking at Turkey and Erdogan for an answer, what he will say. And Turkey is dead silent about this. So just an example, I mean, playing the dead silent role is the best option for Turkey to handle this situation. But I'm not so sure that this will continue like this. That's just my assumption. There will be a point where things will change pro-Ukrainian in Turkish foreign policy, because that's a part of Turkish NATO membership. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. And going on that same note, with the NATO meeting coming up shortly in Brussels, and he's going to be face to face with these other world leaders, how do you think how do you think some of those meetings are going to go down when he's face to face with his NATO partners?
Are you asking this to me? Well, if Erdogan will be there, he will probably follow a two-sided policy. I mean, in domestic side, he always says that he is resisting against the West, against the evil plans of the, this Western countries. This is his rhetoric in Turkey. I mean, if you are able to read Turkish newspapers and the statements in Turkish, you will see this. But in the foreign part, he will say, I will do whatever it needs to play my role, but he will most probably think that I am just beneath Russia geographically. So it's easier for most of the NATO countries to say that, to ask us to do certain things, but thinking about geographically, what kind of a protection will you provide to us? Because US has just canceled F-35, and Turkey needs some air force in order to defend itself in case of a Russian aggression. So what kind of promises, what kind of concessions will I receive from NATO? So he will turn this into a case of bargaining scenario again. That's what I think. So there will be no clear answers. There will be bargaining going on. That's what I think, of course.
Janice, any thoughts? And then again,
I agree with Evren. completely. Honestly, he is a negotiator. And I think he will put his best face forward to these allies. He knows he has to be humble in a way to gain what he needs for his country, but yet play that middle guy and, not be too committed, because, he knows he has to keep Putin happy at the same time. Really, strategically and geographically, he has to play the safe card.
And we do have a comment from our third panelist, question for Evren. How did Erdogan respond to Israel's visit to Turkey and what happened?
Well, I did not follow it that much, to be honest with you, because I was mostly concerned with Turkish foreign policy, focusing on Ukraine and the recent crisis. But traditionally, one might think that Erdogan is following anti-Israel policies based on, to limit Israel's impact zone within the region, etc. We all remember him from his famous 1-minute speech and his reaction to Israel, etc. But recently, in the last 5 years, especially after the military coup attempt of 2016, the traditional Turkish foreign policy towards Israel has shifted. I mean, traditional Turkish foreign policy towards Israel under Erdogan's rule has shifted a little bit. Now Erdogan considers Israel as an ally, as an economic, financial ally. And also regarding the Syrian civil war, both countries have somehow supported similar parties of the conflict. So the recent visit of Israel to Turkey is considered positive for Turkey, because Turkey says that if we have closer relations, closer ties with Israel, then we will obviously have closer ties with United States as well. This is the Turkish state of mind when it comes to foreign affairs, unfortunately. So it must have been considered as a positive thing, but I did not follow Erdogan's specific reaction to it. He is very busy with dealing with the NATO members right now. I'm sorry, I was focused on that, so I cannot give you a better answer than this one. Sorry.
No, thank you very much. And then another question, we're still open for questions. I'm just seeing it as, a novice to some of these issues, but just, the different strong minds popping up. What do you think was a sentinel event in the last 50 years or so that made it possible for Erdogan to kind of really become this leader in Turkey for as long as he had? If you can kind of pinpoint anything that just really kind of made it easier for him to rise to power and stay in power.
I would defer to Evren on this one. I mean, I honestly, I think it's part of his characteristics. I think he's charismatic, and I think it's his personality and who he is, and the way he conducts himself with people, and the way he manages his policies, but, I think that he came in at the right time. There had been 3 coups. I think right after the 1980 coup, he took, the opportunity to get into politics, and he just, kept going from there. But again, Evren, I'll let you speak more.
Well, from a sociological perspective, the Turkish revolution itself, the establishment of Turkish Republic, was an act by a minority, which means that the military officers who fought the Turkish War of Independence have established a secular republic, and they tried to create their urban elite in the cities that were established after the establishment of Republic of Turkey. And while doing this, the majority of Turkish political leaders until late 1970s, late 1980s, have literally neglected the needs and demands of rural areas. So I remember as a child, when I was growing up in Turkey, I was living in a big city called Izmir, but I was visiting a small town of it, which was 100 kilometers away. And in that small town, I was seeing people coming from the villages with their daily, with their business suites or their, groom clothes on, okay, like when they were putting on their wedding day. And I was asking, where are you coming from? They were saying, we are coming to the town to visit the hospital, to see the government officials, because there were no hospitals in villages, and they were putting their their poshest clothes to visit the doctor, because doctor was such a rare person to see for them. So what Erdogan did, especially coming after power, is to establish small satellite cities around the big cities to attract all these people living in villages to sell their land, come and live in the cities. You know, everyone would have a right of university. He established 170 universities all around the country, so each person can have a university degree, etc. But he didn't think about the consequences. He just said, let's get everyone a hospital, a public school, you know, take them out of the agricultural land, bring them to the cities, let them integrate into the small jobs that pay very less, like, you know, a university graduate working at register, working at a coffee shop, etc. But they still have a university degree and they live in the cities. So with this sociological transformation, he achieved to consolidate his votes in the country, because those people who were visiting the town to see a doctor now have doctors there next door, because they live in suburban areas, but they are not like the suburbs of United States or Canada. These suburbs are like, you know, huge apartment buildings with 200 families living in the same area, but still they are living in the city, and they have access to doctor, access to public education. Their kids go to the university. They have a house in the city. This transformation, this, how can I say it? This ideological and sociological shift of, let's say, rural to urban area settlement has consolidated his power, and he has been managing it quite good in his way with his own rhetoric. He says, I am, you know, he uses the rhetoric of Islam, he uses the rhetoric of their, you know, pious lives, etc., and all of these things. And all the people in Turkey who support Erdogan, not everyone, but the people who support him, they believe that he deserves to live in that palace, live all the best life, because he's the one who liberated them from their villages. So this is the general picture I can give to you about how he consolidates his power within the country. And as long as he consolidates his power, since we are a democracy, since we are living in a world of democracies, he continues his rule.
Thank you. That was very enlightening. So we are wrapping up. I will just turn it back over to Janice, and then Evren, if you have any last words.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you again. It's been a pleasure to speak today. Thank you, Angelique, for your support and moderating our panel. And thank you to my two panelists today. It was, I'm sorry we didn't get to hear Firmanda. Hopefully we'll get to hear a recorded version. And Evren, it was a pleasure and speaking with you and balancing off of you. Thank you.
Thanks. I have the same feelings, Janice. And I also wanted to hear Firmanda so much, but you know, I'm really sorry about that. But as Angelique said, we will be able to listen to your presentation. Thank you very much, and it was a great pleasure to be here. This organization, thanks for your accommodation, Angelique, and thanks for your contributions to the both panelists, and thanks for the attendees for their positive approach during the talk. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and again, would like to thank our third panelist, Firmanda. So sorry that, you know, due to technical difficulties, we weren't able to really, you know, have your presentation, but we will add it when we load up the recordings to YouTube. So again, thank you to our panelists, thank you to our audience, and hope everyone has a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you.